Good morning. For 20 years, I've been launching new digital services all over the world. It's a very exciting thing to do, and as I've done this, I've noticed that consumers are starting to change, because as more and more people start to access services on digital devices, they start to look at the rest of the world and wonder, why haven't these guys also launched a digital device? And for that reason, I think what's happening in our world right now is that we're beginning to redefine the rules of society. We're redefining the world in terms of software. We're taking internet logic and internet rules, and we're starting to apply that to traditional businesses. And that's a gigantic shift. It's a huge change. And because of that change, to understand that change, we need to adopt a new lexicon. We need to start to think beyond disruption. After a couple of days of talking about disruption here, I'm sure you're ready to get beyond disruption as well. So let's get started. The topic came to mind about a month ago for me. My friend Ken Hertz started a Kickstarter campaign. Now, Ken's a successful businessman, and like you and me, he travels quite a lot. And he noticed that most carry-on bags are inefficient, and he decided to do something about it, so he hired a design firm, and in collaboration, they designed what they thought was the best rollerboard suitcase ever. And he put this project up on Kickstarter, and lo and behold, it was very successful. As you can see, he raised about 20 times the amount of money he was seeking. And by the way, if you're interested in this suitcase, it's still available on Kickstarter for a couple more days at a low, low price. So that was cool. I heard about this thing. I said, that's a neat idea. Good for him. I decided to promote it to my friends on Facebook. And a conversation ensued, as it always does in digital media. One of my smart-ass friends posted a comment and said, "The first disruptive bag, really?" Because in the video, they said that this was a bag that was going to disrupt the $38 billion luggage industry. So they used that term disruptive, and then a whole lively dialogue ensued about the meaning of the word disruptive, and maybe it's an overused term at this point. Maybe we use that phrase too much. And this whole dialogue, this whole digital skirmish, made me think of something from the 1980s. Back in the 1980s. Now, when you think about the 80s, you tend to think about silly haircuts and goofy outfits and pop stars. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm talking about something different. There was a term coined in 1981. The term was compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue. And what we mean by that phrase, in 1981, they were referring to first responders who are dealing with people who've been traumatized. Nurses, doctors, emergency medical crews. They tend to get desensitized because they're exposed to so much trauma themselves that they get numb to the process and they lose their compassion. So that's compassion fatigue. But remember, this was in the 1980s. And that was the time of junk bonds and corporate raiders and takeovers, hostile takeovers and so forth, you know, where pension funds were seized and assets were stripped from old companies and a whole bunch of people would get fired. And so this phrase, compassion fatigue, got kind of co-opted. It was taken away from the first responders, and it started to get co-opted by financiers in New York, and you ended up with a situation like this, where a couple bankers are walking down the street, and they step over a homeless guy, and they say, "Gee, I used to think I was callous and indifferent, but in fact, it turns out I just got compassion fatigue." So they take that kind of standard New York indifference and turn it into a pathology. But you know, I knew there was a kind of fatigue happening. That's compassion fatigue from the 80s. Now, I knew there was a kind of fatigue happening, but it wasn't compassion fatigue. It was something different. And I realized what we're suffering as a society right now is disruption fatigue. Come on, you all have it, right? We hear this term so frequently. There's more than 100 books on the topic disruption. Disruption for every single thing you can imagine. We have clean disruption, about green energy. Dirty bomb disruption, if you will, kind of dirty disruption. There are disruption waves, disruption curves, a wheel of disruption. I'm not making this stuff up. These are from experts in the field, consultants who generate these kind of charts. And in fact, they all get together every year at a conference called Disrupt to talk about this stuff and exchange their diagrams and charts with each other. And we're told by these experts that we're disrupting the auto industry, and we're now disrupting the education field, and we're disrupting the healthcare field, and we're disrupting the food industry. We're even disrupting Wall Street, finally. Some of the companies that are launching now, these new startup ventures that have these peer-to-peer exchanges on phones, they're running up against old rules and regulations, labor marketplace rules, and so forth. And so the view is that they're disrupting the law. They're even disrupting government in some fashion. There's even been water supply disruption. OK, this is a real thing. This is legit. This is the original meaning of disruption. Some people talk about a disruption economy. Just a couple days ago, Hillary Clinton, in her campaign trail speech, called upon Silicon Valley disruptors to disrupt ISIS. I love this, right? Imagine Travis Kalanick and his bully boys at Uber stopping their process of beating up the cab industry and turning their attention to fight terrorism. Good luck with that, Hillary. So we're using this term a lot, and I think some people are starting to get resistant to it. There's a notion that there's a problem with this word disruption. One of the problems is a lot of people don't even know what it means. We use the term incorrectly. And recently, Clayton Christensen, the author of The Innovator's Dilemma, and the man who coined the term and created the disruption theory, this theory of disruption and innovation, he had to come out and remind everybody what it was about. He wrote an article about a month ago in the Harvard Business Review. It was quite a good, kind of a timely article to respond to this. But he's been under attack as well. There was an article about a year ago from Jill Lepore in the New Yorker that demolished him. It really attacked him severely. And there have been a couple of articles since then saying that disruption theory has some weaknesses. And of course, Clayton Christensen and others have responded. There's been a lively dialogue about that. But I think we can all say there's a consensus forming that we overuse this term disruption. We need to think about it in a different way. And so that's disruption fatigue, where people feel like, oh my gosh, another disruption. Really? Seriously? We've heard it so many times. What this does, though, is a problem. It creates a new problem, and it's a very dangerous problem. What it does is it causes us to get numb to the gigantic changes that are happening, because there are big changes occurring. They're not all necessarily fitting Christensen's disruption model, not necessarily exact models of disruption, but there is a sweeping change. And the problem with disruption fatigue is it kind of blinds people. Not you guys, because you're consultants. You understand this stuff. You understand these dynamics of change very, very well. But I'm sure you've observed at your clients that there's a certain group of people who suffer from what I call change blindness. And change blindness is a big problem. The symptoms include a sense of passivity, a denial, an inability to accept what's happening, take responsive action, an inability to adapt to changes, and a dangerous over-reliance on regulation, litigation, and laws to protect those old businesses. So I believe that we need a new narrative. We need to move beyond disruption and talk about a new narrative that describes technological change, and that's what I'm going to try to give you in the next few minutes of my talk here. You see, for people who have change blindness, and even some people who've got disruption fatigue, they look around at the world, they're a little bit numb, they're a little bit passive, and they look at this world and they say, wow, it's a world of magic and mystery. All these new changes that are happening, aren't they wonderful and surprising? Wow. But they don't feel like they're at cause. They're not able to do something about it. It's happening to them. That's a very deeply disempowering narrative. Now, what we all know is that this is actually an age of digital wonders. Digital technology is what's behind all those changes. And in fact, digital technology makes it possible for individual people to affect a big change. You have to get your clients to get over that hump from passivity to action, to understand that there's something they can do to drive change. They don't have to just be on the receiving end of change. This can happen much faster than most people believe. Let me give you an example. 5 years ago, the idea of robot vehicles seemed preposterous. 5 years ago, most people thought, come on, this is never going to happen, or if it does happen, it's going to be way out in the future. That was just 5 years ago. It wasn't just the technology that was difficult. It wasn't just the mapping and the ability of these vehicles, robot vehicles, to see and find their way through safely in traffic. But there's also a raft of laws that govern the way people operate vehicles, liability laws and so forth. And it seemed like that was an intractable problem 5 years ago. Today, robot vehicles seem inevitable. So we've gone from improbable to inevitable in 5 years. And 5 years from now in the future, they won't even seem special anymore. They'll be normal. So it'll be a 10-year span from improbable to expected and inevitable to normal and not even anything special. I've seen this again and again in my career because I've launched so many digital services, and in the beginning people always say that's impossible, it can't happen, it'll never happen. Well, never's a very long time. Typically in my experience, in about 5 years, never goes from impossible to probable. Very, very quickly. Robots are spilling into our lives in a lot of ways, not just in vehicles. There are robot restaurants in Beijing and San Francisco. There's a robot hotel in Beijing. 90% of the staff are robots. And in Berlin, if you want a drink, you can get a drink from this robot bartender who'll mix a drink for you. So we're starting to see robots as someone that we can interact with. Robots are leaving the factory floor, and they're starting to show up in surprising places in our lives. In fact, those robots on the factory floor were dangerous. The robots in auto factories that have been around for about 30 years, those robots are moving very quickly. And they're deaf, dumb, and blind. They can't see people. So for that reason, in an auto body plant where they have robot workers, they actually fence them off. Humans aren't allowed to go near those machines because they'll get killed if they go near them. There have been 3 fatalities in auto factories, one in Japan, one in the US, and one in Europe. And all 3 fatalities happened when a human inadvertently walked in the way of a robot that was moving. The robot killed him. That's the old robots, industrial robots. But now, as you can see from this picture, we trust robots with our lives. Robots have developed so quickly now. They have this precise ability to measure, control. The technology has improved so fast that we now can rely on them to do things as precise as surgery on a human being. So the robot example is a good illustration of something that's happening. I think is a big, major trend that we need to pay attention to. It's not just about disruption. It's actually a bigger story. And that is that software models used to be something that happened on a computer or on the internet. And that is to say, we would take a business process and we would model it in software, and typically that lived online. But now, with robotics and other technologies, what's happening is software models are starting to permeate and operate in the real world around us. And that's how software is starting to redefine the world. I believe that the information economy is reshaping the rules of the real world. Not just our economy, but also society in general and our government. That's a gigantic shift. How this happened, it took about 30 years. 3 kinds of connections that you're all familiar with. The first one, back in 1968, ARPANET, the first protocols that connected one computer to another, and by 1982, we had the basic protocols for the modern internet that we are familiar with today. The second big change is one that we're living through right now, and that's connecting a computer to a mobile phone. That's a gigantic shift. It's not done yet. There are about 2 billion mobile phones right now, smartphones, that are connected to the internet, about 4 billion mobile phones in general. And by the end of this decade, they expect that 2/3 of humanity will have a smartphone. But it's, of course, not just limited to mobile phones. There's tablets and there's a lot of other devices that will be connected to that network. That brings me to the third big change, the third big shift, which is connecting a computer to everything. And this is a colossal opportunity. It's a gigantic change in the way society works. It means we're going to cognitize everything. The world around us is going to start to wake up. We've already started to see some of the glimmers of this. We've started to see some of the early precursors of this. For instance, things like Google Glass, admittedly an early prototype, but it's not out yet. It's going to come back. There'll be a new version of that in the future. Wearable devices like a Nike Fuel Band. Now what's current is the smartwatch. But in a couple years, these things are going to seem like artifacts from a bygone era, because soon enough, we're going to have temporary tattoos that you can paste on your skin. They've developed a graphene tattoo that you can put on your teeth that'll measure body chemistry inside of your mouth. We're going to have projectable computers, virtual computers, that'll be projected on your skin. You'll simply use gesture control, gesture tracking to do input or voice command for them, so that we'll kind of vaporize the computer itself. And implantable computers, like these RFID chips that have been implanted in hands. There are also ingestible computers that you can swallow as they pass through your body system. They'll analyze your blood chemistry and your body chemistry and issue reports. So we're starting to take computers inside us and wear computers around us. And of course, in our homes now, we're also getting accustomed to having smart devices, smart appliances. These are common things. They're quite common. You'll find them all at Home Depot. This Nest thermostat, or a Withings smart bathroom scale, or a smart door lock that recognizes you when you come home and opens automatically. You can even set it to recognize a friend and open the doors for them when you're not there. These are not science fiction. These are products that are being sold right now in retail for Christmas this year. The next step, of course, is to combine the wearable computer with the devices around us, the smart devices around us. That's going to be a gigantic shift, because what it means is that we're going to start to extend our sense of self into these smart devices around us. They'll recognize us, they'll work with us, we'll share data with them. That's a big, gigantic change in consumer behavior. It hasn't happened yet, it's on its way. But we're starting to see the first glimmers of what a computing environment looks like. I come from Cleveland, Ohio. It's where I grew up. How many people know Cleveland? Great. It's a great town. It's got a fantastic art museum, one of the greatest art collections in the United States. But the museum itself is very small. It was built 100 years ago. So a few years ago, they shut down the museum completely and rebuilt it as a modern 21st century museum. And if you do happen to go to Cleveland, you've got to check out that art museum, because on the first floor, they have this display, which is this incredible wall-sized computer. It's like the world's biggest iPad, if you will. And the most fun thing about it is to watch little kids. They always have school classrooms, elementary students come there, and watch the little kids when they go up to that wall, because it's super fun to see them. They don't need a manual. They don't need instruction. They run up to the wall. They touch it. They swipe. They move with their gestures. They intuitively know how to work in an environment that is designed for totally surrounding computing environment. That's what they're growing up, and they're being aware of that without even being instructed on how to do it. So this is a new generation of humans that's coming along. They expect the world to respond to them. They expect to be in a responsive environment. Another example of that is a fully robotic warehouse like this Amazon warehouse. So we're building environments that themselves are computers. And of course, our cars today, not just robot vehicles, but any luxury car, has about 100 computers on it, automated control systems. So you can think of your car as a giant rolling smartphone. And soon enough, they'll be doing remote upgrades and downloads to those cars, just like we do with our smartphones, because consumers are going to expect it. By 2020, there are supposed to be 200 million connected cars on the road. 200 million. Those connected cars will be driving through cities with intelligent sensors built into the road. They might be embedded in the roadway. They might be in the lights. As cities are replacing their old halogen lights and they're replacing them with LEDs, they're starting to use those light masts as a kind of grid, an intelligent grid that has Wi-Fi, telecommunications, the ability to hang public safety equipment, sensors for traffic and noise and sound levels and emissions and so forth. And so gradually what we're doing is we're turning the whole city into a giant computing surface. That's the world that we're going to be in, and not too far in the future, because all of this is happening. There are more than 50 cities in the world that are doing smart city deployments right now. The point is simple. Whatever can be connected will be. You heard it from the previous speaker, and I totally endorse what Gina said. I think she's absolutely spot on. This is a gigantic shift, and most companies haven't yet got their heads wrapped around it. Sure, the IT companies, the tech companies, they understand it. But it's the other industries, the industries that you deal with, they need roller skates to catch up with the IT industry. You see, when everything is connected, the scale changes. Let me show you a diagram that will illustrate the scale for you. We already have hundreds of millions of computers connected on the internet. Of course, they talk to billions of smartphones, 4 billion by the end of the decade. But that doesn't stop there. By the end of the decade, you'll also have tens of billions of smart devices, Internet of Things, devices talking to those smartphones. Some low estimates say there'll be 20 billion devices. High estimates go above 50 billion devices by 2020. Whatever estimate you agree with, the point is there will be billions of smart devices talking to billions of smartphones and hundreds of millions of computers. And of course, all of those devices will be collecting data from trillions of sensors. This is the big infrastructure project for the next 10 years. We're going to live through this transition, and what comes out the other side will be radically different. One thing we know for sure, and Gina touched on this point as well, and I think it's a super important point, is that all those billions and billions of devices are going to be generating enormous amounts of data, what the economist calls a data deluge. In 2010, we crossed a threshold as a human society. We generated 1 zettabyte of data. In 2010. 1 zettabyte, that's a million gigabytes. In the past, we used to measure data in the form of exabytes and petabytes, but we needed a new term in 2010 because we were generating so much information. Well, by 2014, we generated 4 times as much information as we did in 2010. And the organization that measures this is IDC. They publish a report each year called Data Universe. And they update these projections. And they projected that by 2020, we would generate 35 zettabytes. But then in 2013, they came out with a revision to that report, and they said, actually, we were wrong. We underestimated. It's going to be 40 zettabytes of data by 2020. And then they came out last year, and they said, actually, our estimates were off a little bit. We'll generate 44 zettabytes of data by 2020. 44 zettabytes, that's a 40-fold increase in the amount of data in 1 decade. No wonder pundits and experts say that data is the new oil. It's like a great untapped natural resource that replenishes itself. In fact, it increases so fast that we can barely get our hands wrapped around it. And again, Gina talked about how your clients are inundated with information. This gigantic data geyser is going to create huge opportunities, not just in the analysis and capturing of data, but also in artificial intelligence, because humans can't process this much data. So artificial intelligence, whether or not you're a skeptic about general artificial intelligence, we already know that application-specific artificial intelligence is here. We see it today in high-frequency trading. We see it today in the trading of automated trading and buying of spots, advertising. So we're starting to see these marketplaces for data emerge, where robots are trading with other robots, or automated systems are trading with other automated systems. We need artificial intelligence in order to handle the data deluge. This is a gigantic business opportunity. It will reshape every industry. I believe it's going to reshape society, because as we become more and more aware of the data exhaust or data smog that we give off just as we move through the city every single day on our way to work, we're going to start to realize there's value there. We're going to start to become aware of patterns we didn't even know existed, our own behaviors that we're unaware of. And we're going to start to adapt to that information. It's like new visibility to unconscious behavior that we've all had for dozens and dozens of years. Now suddenly we'll be able to know it, be aware of it, act on it, and improve it. And that's how we're going to change society. A couple years ago, the head of one of the biggest agency holding companies in the world said to me, "What's the most important trend I need to know for the next 5 years?" I said, "That's easy. That's really easy. Take everything that happened in the information economy in the last 30 years and apply it to everything else. If you have clients that are in any business that involves geography, and by that I mean retail, logistics, transportation, aeronautics, all of these fields are going to be transformed by information science. It's already happening. The supply chain is being decomposed and recompiled in a million different ways. If you have any clients that deal with biology, biology is the new information science. So whether they're clients that are working in pharmaceutical or healthcare or agriculture and food, biology becoming an information science means that we're going to now be able to program at the level of the cell. We're going to be able to reprogram biology and control it exactly the way we do with software. This is already happening. In fact, there's a Kickstarter campaign right now that has a consumer-grade CRISPR kit so that people can edit DNA at home. You can give this to your kid for Christmas. It's unbelievable the fast rate that biology is changing. And this will be a sweeping transformation of the industry. It'll also solve, potentially, fuel problems and food problems in the future. Robotics and in the future, nanotechnology are going to give us the ability then to change manufacturing as well, turn that into an information business. Nanotech gives us the ability to program matter at the level of the molecule. So we're starting to reprogram the world as all of these fields become fields of information science. That's a gigantic shift. It gives us the ability to be masters of our own destiny, to direct human and natural evolution into the future. There's an even weirder phenomenon. This is the one I'm really excited to share with you, which is dematerialization. This is a topic I'm so fascinated about. I wrote a book about it. The book is called Vaporized. And what I mean by vaporized is taking physical stuff and replacing it entirely with information services. Very few companies want to do that to themselves. They're kind of resistant to that notion because they're attached fondly to the physical products that they make. And that means that field is wide open for disruptive companies that want to come in and steal the future from those companies. Every business, every product, every business process, every executive in a company, every manager has information embedded inside of them. If that information can be freed and productized and distributed over the digital network, an entirely new business opportunity arises. Books have been vaporized. Amazon now sells more digital books than hardbound and paperbound books combined. Music has been vaporized. Streaming media services are the #1 source of revenue for the music industry. Games have been totally vaporized. The mobile game business has reshaped the economics of game publishing, so much so that it's actually changing the way people design video games. And the television industry is being vaporized. Now, my friends and colleagues in the TV business don't like it when I say this, but it's happening right now. You see this. People are migrating en masse to digital services, OTT, over-the-top services that give you video on demand, services like Netflix and Amazon Prime and so forth. This is happening on a global basis. And when we say we're vaporizing these businesses, I don't just mean that we're not selling discs or not selling books like hardbound media. Sure, that's part of it. But the other part of it is that all of the infrastructure to deliver, to manufacture and deliver that media in a hard form, all of that's being vaporized as well. So in the TV industry, you can now launch a video program on your own from your living room, and you don't need a broadcast station, you don't need spectrum, you don't need to buy satellites and put them in space. All that stuff that traditional TV companies had to do to be in business, that's not necessary. You can compete with a TV company today just by putting your stuff on the Amazon cloud. There are turnkey video services that make that possible. There are more than 1 million people, 1 million individuals making their own shows on YouTube today. There's your disruption. So we're turning physical things, like media, like books, into information. And what that means is the information is available all the time. Because of mobile devices, we can get it on our fingertips at any time. That's a huge transformation to us. Information as atmosphere means it's freely available. It can be available at any single time, wherever you are, whatever context you're in. That changes consumer expectations, because as we rely more and more on our smartphones as our primary source of information and our primary point of access to the internet, increasingly then, we're going to expect every company to offer a vaporized version of its wares. And if they don't do it, we're not going to hang out and try to find it. We're going to switch to something else. We're going to find another person who provides it. That's a giant inflection point that's starting to sweep through just about every industry. So for example, the maps business. Now, until fairly recently, when you traveled overseas, you need to buy a map. Remember companies like Rand McNally and Falk Publishing? Those were good businesses back in the day. You'd pay $15 for a piece of paper, basically, with colorful printing on it. That's over now. Everybody has a smartphone with a map app inside of it. And these map apps change us. An entire generation is growing up that will never experience what it means to be lost in a foreign city. And the new maps are so much better than the old maps. They tell you exactly where you are. They tell you exactly where you need to go in the language of your choice. If you get lost, you're not really lost because it tells you where to go. It tells you where you are. And that's not all. There's another big change that comes. Because when we use an app like this on our mobile phone, it unlocks a part of data that we were never even aware of. It turns out there's data encoded in every building you pass by, every monument in every city, every street corner, every intersection. There's data there, but you can't see it. It's like an invisible layer, a new dimension that we were unaware of. These smart map apps reveal that data to us and make it accessible and consumable for us. In fact, the mobile phones are so smart now that they can predict where you're going next, and they can start to make intelligent recommendations. Services like Google Now on Tap will take all of your text messages, email, your appointments, and your calendar, and they get a sense of your geography because you're using their map app as well. So they kind of know where you are and where you're going next, and they can start to predict and make recommendations that they think you will like. Recommendations that fit with your particular diet or your particular habits, whatever that phone knows about you. So these smart maps can predict where we're going next and tailor things to us. Now, I want to be really clear. This phenomenon isn't limited to maps or music or media in general. We're also vaporizing hardware. We're vaporizing physical products. Back in 2002, this RIM BlackBerry pager was considered an early smartphone because it took 4 different devices and compressed them into a single device. You remember, everybody had one of those. Every consultant had one of those. By 2007, Apple took the functionality of several consumer electronics devices like cameras and video players and compressed that down into software that was inside of the mobile phone. By 2010, a standard issue Samsung smartphone, the kind they give away free when you sign up with a mobile operator, comprised the feature functionality of about 25 different consumer electronics products. And it was no coincidence at the exact same time that the Japanese electronics companies, those giants from the 1980s, suddenly started looking like weaklings because they saw double-digit decreases in sales of every one of those consumer products. No one needed to buy them anymore. We just don't need to carry around another screen, another device, another charger, another set of batteries. It's a bunch of gear we don't have to carry because we've vaporized it. We've replaced that functionality with software in your mobile phone. If you don't like the camera that comes with your phone, you can download another one, usually for free, instantaneously with a touch of an icon. This process is not done. Right now, this year is the year we're going to replace everything in your wallet. We're going to vaporize the stuff in your wallet, your credit cards, your access cards, your key cards, your identity cards, your boarding passes, and so forth. We're all experiencing this right now. Just a couple weeks ago, I checked into a hotel in San Francisco, and this is the key card they gave me. I liked it so much I took a picture of the front and back. On the front, it says, "My days as a key are numbered." And in the back, they're trying to get me to sign up for the SPG app. And it's pretty smart, right? Because what they'd like to do is stop giving out key cards to people. It's a big waste if you think about it. With a smartphone, I can come in, if I have the app and I opt in for their permission marketing and I'd sign up for the app, when I come to the hotel, I can check in, pair my phone at the front desk, and then when I walk into the hotel, I walk into my room, I just wave my phone in front of the door, and the smart lock will recognize me, open the door. Okay, that's cool. That's fairly obvious. The next step, though, is one that gets me very excited. What's clearly going to come next is as SPG starts to know me as a traveler and starts to get permissions from me, they'll be able to dynamically reconfigure that hotel room so that my favorite Spotify playlist will be on the stereo system. My favorite streaming video service will appear on the TV screen. And what they'll do then is transform that physical hotel room into a digital service. This is the most important point. As goods become information rich and that information is liberated from the physical good, those goods give up the physical characteristics of products and they begin to take on the service dynamics of a digital business. They become digital services. Every company will become a software company. Every manufacturer must adopt quickly the ability to manufacture software systems that go along with their smart devices. This is a mandate that every company you deal with needs to adopt. They must respond to this. Lyft and Uber, the car-sharing services, give us a great example of taking a physical object and turning it into a service. They're not vaporizing the car, but what they are doing is turning transportation on demand into a service that we can have without the need for a car. They're vaporizing ownership. Why buy a car if I can get transportation on demand? Why buy the cow if I can have the milk? It's a shock to the system. It's a shock to the auto manufacturers. But this is clearly coming. There's a rising group of people now in cities, mostly in urban areas, who feel like they don't need to buy a car, pay for the insurance, pay for the maintenance of the car. Why bother when you can get rides on demand just by touching an icon on your phone? Airbnb, which the previous speaker mentioned, is doing something similar. Without owning any hotels, without owning any rooms, no real estate, they have no hospitality staff on the payroll. They've expanded to 30,000 cities around the world. They have 1 million properties available to you today. I just booked a room on there this morning. Whatever can be vaporized will be. Whatever part of a business can be vaporized will be. I'm not trying to suggest that food and everything that we need to live in, shelter and so forth, are going to be vaporized. Of course not. But the point is, if there's an information substitute for an old way of getting something or an old way of buying something, that information substitute is clearly going to emerge. And if the incumbent companies fail to act, well, then someone else will steal that opportunity from them. Universities are going to be vaporized. This is very clear. Every major university now offers their curriculum online for free, streaming to millions of people. They have no choice, because there's a host of venture-funded startup companies that are trying to disrupt that field by offering something similar. Money will be vaporized. This is where cryptocurrencies and bitcoins fit into the picture. Now, whether or not Bitcoin is a success, which remains to be seen, whether or not it succeeds, what we now know is that the principle of digital currency has been expounded and proven. And as we collectively as a society spend more and more time in front of digital screens, we now spend about 10 hours a day in front of digital screens, and we're transacting the whole time we're in front of those screens. We need a digital currency for a digital world. That's where cryptocurrencies fit in. Money will be vaporized. Human labor is getting vaporized. And this brings us back to robotics, because that's exactly what robotics is about. Labor used to be something that everybody had. We possessed labor. We brought it to the marketplace. We exchanged our labor for wages, and the wages made it possible for us to go out and buy goods. That's the Henry Ford principle. That's how a consumer society has operated for the past 100 years. But now, labor is something like an MP3 track that can be downloaded from the cloud and installed on 1 million devices. That's a tremendous shift, and it's going to totally change the dynamics of labor in the future. Where will this process of vaporization stop? You're probably wondering that right now. Where does it stop? The answer is it won't stop. It won't stop. A year ago, Apple told us there were 1.3 million apps in the App Store. Today, that number is 1.6 million. There are more than 1,000 apps launched every day, 40,000 apps every single month. That's 40,000 products that used to be sold in physical form. That's 40,000 products that used to be manufactured in a factory, put in a box, put on a truck, delivered to a warehouse, then put into a retail store. All of that is being vaporized 40,000 times a month. That's the process. That's the speed at which this process moves. It's not just happening with consumer apps. It's also happening in the back end of companies. That's what the cloud is all about, vaporizing the back office. Here are services that all of us know and use. Hundreds of millions of people touch these services every single week. Dropbox, Airbnb, Pinterest. These are very different services. They don't have much in common, but they have one important thing in common. They all ride on Amazon Web Services. They all ride on Amazon's cloud. They're taking advantage of Amazon's infrastructure. Amazon recently gave guidance that they're going to expect to generate about $6 billion in revenue in cloud services. It's their most profitable and fastest growing business line, and they're not the only ones. Microsoft is hard on their heels. This is the year you're going to start to see consolidation in cloud offerings. There's a lot of companies trying to get into the cloud because they see it as the next $100 trillion industry or some huge figure like that. They're scrambling to get into that business, but what's going to happen quickly is companies are going to go with the tried and the true, the companies they know are going to be around, and so you're going to start to see a weaning of the cloud offerings this year. What's important about the cloud is to understand that it's an accelerant to innovation. It removes barriers to innovation. It makes it possible for feisty young startups to emerge very quickly and scale very quickly. Just a few years ago, in 2007, when you started a software company, you needed to show a scalability plan to your investors. Today, that's over. Today, as my friend Andrew Hessel, the biohacker, says, today, the next biotech billionaire will start her company in a Starbucks with a laptop computer and a smartphone and a credit card, because she'll set up an account on Amazon Web Services to host her infrastructure for the vaporized startup. That's clearly what's happening next. And that's how the information economy is reshaping the real world. These are the lessons. This is the narrative that you need to take back to your clients. Wake them up. Shake them out of change blindness. Shake them out of the apathy of disruption overload. And make them alive to the possibilities of the information economy. I'm Robert Tercek. Thank you very much for your time and attention today. Enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you.